the historic RSA Space Showcase. The first RSA Space Group in 270 years.
Whoa.
Wonderful. So how many of you are RSA fellows? All right. Wonderful. We'll start with a quick icebreaker. Do you know what this number represents, by any chance? Any ideas?
Months?
No? This is how many people are in space right now. This is the space population. It's a small village on the ISS, and hopefully we'll get a higher number with more zeros at the end very soon. So very quickly about the RSA. So the RSA is a 270 years old organization. Throughout history, RSA led a wide range of social impact work. Some of you, if they're coming from an architectural background, they might know about the Crystal Palace Expo. There are also other initiatives to abolish child labor, scheme to preserve heritage in urban areas, and also the UK's first tree planting campaign. And it is a huge network. It has over 31,000 fellows and growing. Hopefully we'll have even more coming in the RSA Space Group as well. So I tried to explain what the RSA Space Group means. So it's RSA space. But it's more than this. It's not only space manufacturers, space arts and space commerce unified together, coming together in the same place. But it's also focused on how to use those things to leverage space for regeneration, things such as applying Earth observation to monitor habitats, to monitor cities so we can identify ways to improve the planet. And also space for prosperity, how we can use solar energy, how we can use zero-G or different gravity conditions to produce new materials or new medicine. Because space is estimated right now as a 1.8 trillion market opportunity and probably grow in the future. And also space for health. If we think about it, a lot of medicine and a lot of knowledge about the human body was developed during the space program. More than that, technologies developed for space exploration saved millions of lives. So today we'll hear from a wide variety of space creators, space entrepreneurs, space inventors, and also space enthusiasts, and hopefully this will expand to more conversations post-event. So without further ado, I want to present the first speaker for today, Flo Collingwood, the founder and CEO of Pangalactic. Thank you.
No pressure being the first one on. So my name is Flo Collingwood. I'm the co-founder of Pangalactic. We're a team of 6 technologists who are using blockchains and quantum encryption to secure space data. Space data is very important to our way of life here on Earth. It actually accounts for 17% of the GDP here in the UK. So that's industries that specifically rely upon space data. Outside of the commercial aspects, when we start to think about the defense aspects of space data or the importance of data integrity when we're thinking about science data, it's really important to make sure that data cannot be changed or tampered with before the recipient gets it to make use of it. So that really is our focus. I'll show you a video just in a moment, but in the mix of our business, the first part is around security and securing data integrity, but the second part is very much about liberalizing the space economy by bringing developers, so software developers, to our platform to bring innovation and more applications for the future of space. So at the moment when we talk about space, we're thinking of satellites, much like the one on the screen, gathering information and sending it back down for whatever purpose. But in the future and in our lifetime, we will see people living on the moon, we'll see people living in other places, we'll see commercial space stations. And so in order to support that growth, we're going to need a lot of services and a lot of that will be in software. So really, from a liberating space point of view, Pangalactic has created a platform, or is creating a platform, I should say, it's not finished yet, to welcome developers to bring their innovation and to actually be able to participate in the space industry without needing to work for one of the prime contractors. So this really is kind of like pushing on innovation that we have in software for independent developers and bringing them to the space to facilitate things like the future of finance in space. So the question might be is, what do you pay for your Starbucks within space? Is it Starbucks, or like what is the currency of that? How do you facilitate that? Where is the settlement? Is it the US dollar? Is it the pound? There are all sorts of questions that we can ask about economies and other functions that we get through software and how that will look in a space setting. So without further ado, apologies for the rousing music. It's not a Lord of the Rings trailer, but this is our video.
Space. Considered by many to be the next great challenge for humankind to conquer.
Liftoff of
A facilitator for global communications, logistics and defense. A new frontier for industry and a canvas for unlocking new insights about our own planet and our future. But these amazing innovations are powered by technologies which are at risk on a daily basis. Data is the oil of space, and a new threat to that precious commodity is on the horizon. The rapidly developing field of quantum computing presents a growing risk for space tech and data security. Branded as an impending cybersecurity Armageddon by IBM, now more than ever, space tech organizations need to proactively protect their valuable assets from bad actors. That is why Pangalactic are developing Galactic OS, the quantum secure operating system for space. Our system uses industry-leading quantum-safe encryption methods alongside a bespoke kernel and quantum-secure blockchain technology to provide space tech companies with the most secure foundation to develop their systems and run their operations. Features such as a blockchain-powered full system restoration, our intuitive GUI, our development sandbox and secure access credentials through Pangalactic IDs make implementing Galactic OS into your systems as frictionless as possible, while still providing complete confidence that your systems are secure now and for the future. Galactic OS is lightweight and hardware agnostic to support any hardware architecture while still providing a gold standard for data security in space. We are Pangalactic, and this is Galactic OS.
And that's it there. But if anybody would like to talk about space prosperity, business, commerce, and the future emerging space economy, please do give me a nudge. I'm going to laugh at everybody else. Thank you for having me, and it's fantastic.
Thank you very much, Flo. Next we have Professor Vanya Garai, the professor in design at the Brno Design School University. Thank you.
So I'm here to talk about what we do across university when it comes to mainly research. A few years back, I think it was in 2020, the university has set up what is called B-Star, not A-Star yet, but hopefully soon, Brunel Space Travel and Applied Research Network, which basically includes a number of researchers, 60 plus, across the university. Brunel is based in Uxbridge in sort of West London, and there is expertise across a range of areas, from mechanical and aerospace engineering, electronic and electrical engineering, computer science, design, biosciences, sociology, and so on, including taxation and law in space. So far we have had several internally funded, so we can probably call them scoping research projects, which are looking into safe space, women in space, making babies in space, and a number of other topics. I'm participating in Space for Everyone, which is looking into inclusive design of space travel and longer-term life in space. Sean here is the leading investigator for that project. And then obviously there's a number of other. These are basically all looking to expand into potentially something larger. We have this is the first piece of equipment which we acquired. It's a sort of a very small micro and zero gravity simulator, which is going to be used mainly by people in biosciences to sort of simulate the space environment in some experiments they do. We are also working with students increasingly in sort of product design related to space travel. This was one of the projects from 2-3 years ago, which was looking into how do we design medicine containers which are supposed to work in zero microgravity environments. And then I'll talk a bit more about Space for Everyone. This is something which I already mentioned, and it's about looking into how the space travel could be made more inclusive. The project explores the motivations of people with disabilities and older people for space travel and life in space away from the Earth. We're looking into barriers to accessibility and inclusivity in space, and then potential design and technologies to solutions which are hopefully going to improve the accessibility and inclusivity. So far we have done a workshop which was looking into scoping priorities for further research, and as expected in a way that there are issues across the whole kind of journey. From ground training, which would have to be sort of, the idea is to look into how can we redefine the fitness requirements and training procedures to accommodate different access needs. There are certain activities in that space already, but much more is needed still to make things truly inclusive. Then it's about spacecraft, spacesuit and equipment design, which has to be kind of assessed and redesigned across the board. Adaptive technologies which could make things easier to use, starting from again training simulators which are not necessarily inclusive, to redesigning prosthetics and providing adequate perception enhancement solutions. And then it's also about policy. And we're also interested in organizational aspects, which are going not necessarily into the space, but how do we make the whole space industry, which is based on Earth, more inclusive and sort of representative of sort of what diverse populations which we have, and that's again still not really the case. So I think I'll finish here. Sean, anything to add?
No,
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And you can connect with all the speakers you see today on Circle as well. So feel free to take photos. Feel free to connect them on Circle or LinkedIn if you're not in RSA yet. We'll talk about that later. So the next speaker will be Adrian Bowyer. He's the inventor of the 3D printer printing other 3D printers. And he will join us in spirit and also as a video recording. He's a fellow at the RSA as well as an inventor where you can see some of the 3D printers actually at the Science Museum. So we'll see a video about cell replication and manufacturing in space.
Hello, my name is Adrian Bowyer and I started the worldwide RepRap project to make a self-replicating 3D printer. And what I want to talk about today is using self-replication for manufacturing in space. So let me start with that RepRap project. Here is a picture of, on the left, of the very first RepRap machine. The project started in 2004, and by 2008 we've made a machine that was capable of printing the majority of its own parts, and that is the original machine that printed the copy. That's now in the Science Museum, where you can go and have a look at it if you want. And the project has progressed since then. So on the right is a picture of what we might call a modern RepRap machine. Almost everything you can see in that machine has been 3D printed by a machine such as itself. One or two things need to be added in, like the electric motors and the electronics, but all the mechanics of the machine, the way that it actually functions, are decided by parts that are made in a similar or identical machine. And the designs for all of these RepRap machines are available open source and free, so anyone who has a 3D printer can download one and can make one for themselves. Now, how does this impinge upon the idea of manufacturing in space? Well, one of the key problems you've got in any space-based enterprise is having access to a wide variety of material objects, many of which you can't necessarily anticipate in advance, the need for which you can't anticipate in advance. Now, the advantage of manufacturing things in a customizable and more or less instantaneous manner is pretty obvious in that environment. If you decide you need some object, you don't have to send back to the base to get it. It doesn't have to be launched into orbit. It can be manufactured on the spot. And that, as you can see from this, includes the machine that does the manufacturing. So if you've got one of these machines, you can have two, then you can have four, and so on. And we'll come back to that in a minute. Anyway, technology such as this has already been flown in space. This is the 3D printer on the ISS, and that's been there for several years now, and floating in front of it is a 3D printed part that that machine made. And this machine would be quite capable of printing most of the parts for a RepRap machine. So the ISS could have a RepRap machine on board if they wanted, and they'd double their production capacity immediately, 0G. Now, printing in a 3D printer produces parts mainly made out of plastic. There are other types of materials you can put through the machines, in particular ceramics. If you've got access to a kiln as well, or a source of heat, and we'll come to that again in a moment, you can print parts that are made essentially out of clay, ceramic. There are metal printing machines, which are a little bit more fancy, and indeed one of those is either on the ISS already as a successor to this machine, or is about to be launched up there. I'm not quite sure what the status of that particular project is. So we can make things in metals, we can make things in ceramics, we can make things in plastics. And one of the things that you might want to be able to do is to scale this whole process up. Down here on Earth, people use similar technology to this to build whole buildings out of concrete. You make a giant 3D printer and you pour liquid concrete through it, and you use the machine to construct the building. A rather interesting project that was run a few years ago is this one. This is a 3D printer that works using sunlight. What it consists of is a giant Fresnel lens that focuses the sun's rays onto sand, and of course sand is just glass really, and causes the sand to fuse. And by tracking the spot at which the sun's rays are focused over the surface of a container full of sand, you can make a two-dimensional fused shape. And if you then lower that shape slightly and put a new layer of sand on top and fuse the next layer and fuse the next layer and so on, you can build up a complete three-dimensional shape. And all the power for this comes, as I say, from somebody that this uses. So we have machines that can make themselves, they can make lots of useful objects, and they can work in a whole variety of different materials. And so we've got 3D printers that can print most of the parts for more 3D printers, so we can increase the production capacity without an enormous requirement for bringing new material up from Earth. And the technology is intrinsically exponentially growing in that If you've got one machine, you can use that to make two, you can use each of those to make more, and so on. So just like any self-reproducing process, the self-reproducing processes in nature, for example, you sort of get exponential growth. And one of the other things you get when you've got a machine that makes itself is self-repair comes free. If you've got two machines, you can obviously use one to repair the other one, or if you anticipate difficulties, if you've got a perfectly good working machine, you can use it to print a spare set of parts for itself, so that when it goes wrong, it's very easy to repair. Anyway, that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Adrian. For me as a space architect and urbanist, it was really exciting to see the kind of technology that we can use to expand building beyond Earth. So next one we have Dr. Lucy Mason talking about the future regulation of space technologies.
Thank you very much. I sort of wish I just recorded myself and sent it. That was genius. And no, I'm glad to be here in person to actually talk to all of you. Right. So hi everyone, I'm Lucy Mason. So my day job is actually, I'm a Director of Defence and Security Innovation at Capgemini. So Capgemini is a big global technology business, 300,000 people in 50 countries around the world. And we do all kinds of different things, but the bit that I do is mostly around how can the government be more innovative in creating new capabilities for defence and security purposes. So my other hat is this Regulatory Horizons Council. So I'm going to mainly talk to you with this hat on, but I just thought I'd explain what I actually do. The Regulatory Horizons Council is a group of volunteers, essentially. So we're a bunch of academics and industry people. We're selected by the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology and appointed by the Science Minister, and we advise the government on future and emerging technologies and how the government can think about regulating or not regulating those kind of new areas that they need to be thinking about in the future. So we're a very futures-focused group. And we published a number of reports which are available on the DSIT website. The bit that I was leading on was the future regulation of space technologies, which if you Google that snappy title, you will find us on the dsit.gov.uk website. So that report was commissioned by DSIT, and they were interested in where are future technologies going and what will be the challenges for government. So we did quite a lot of engagement across the space sector. We ran a futures workshop, and I'll show you in a minute the outcome of that. But the fundamental points of the report, I thought I'll just give you up front rather than say them to the end, is that the future of space regulation is mostly missing in action. It's been sort of alluded to by some of the people already. We don't really know how we would manage a lot of this future capabilities that we're going to build in space. It's a Wild West environment. People are just getting up there and doing stuff. There aren't really standards. We don't want to know what a future space economy would look like. We don't know how we'd regulate it. Space law itself is far from agreed. It isn't really global. There's the Outer Space Treaty, which dates back to 1967, which, lovely as it is, I never envisaged we'd have the kind of level of commercial activity in space that we're looking at over the next 10 years. So fundamentally, what we've got is a big missing gap where we need to fill in the regulatory environment before, or at least alongside, we actually deploy the technologies. Otherwise, we're going to end up with all kinds of problems in space. So I'm going to strike a slightly more negative note about the future of space, as opposed to the very positive stuff we've all heard about so far. We're going to be wanting to do all kinds of things in space, but mostly we want to commercialise space. So we want to think about what are the future economical interests in space, economics of space. But there's also a lot of defence interest in space. So broadly speaking, you've got the US versus China, let's just say. Global geopolitics playing out in space in sort of factions which are starting to align. And there's a huge potential for future conflict. In fact, all current conflicts already rely on space in one way, shape or form. Ukraine is not a spacefaring nation, but is absolutely dependent on space capabilities. And that's going to be the future of warfare. It's only going to get more difficult. And of course, these two trends come into conflict with each other. The more dangerous the future of space is from a defence point of view, the less you want to put commercial stuff up there because it will be at risk of being destroyed or adopted by one or other side. So we could end up with a very dangerous situation which could lead to extreme degradation of the space environment, which, as we know, does not just recover itself. So once we've got a sufficient amount of debris up there, and we may already be at that point, it becomes essentially unusable for any future things we might want to do with it. And enormous misuse of what is actually a very fragile and finite environment, and not, as many people seem to think, an infinite environment in terms of orbital space. So, we identified a bunch of space technologies in the report. This is all in the report, you can get it all up. So you can cut these technologies many ways. We decided to go with this Space 11, I've called them, the Space 11 technologies that we wanted to look at. So the whole first half of the report goes into some depth about the risks, challenges, opportunities and threats of these technologies and how they might evolve over time. But the key point is that you don't want to regulate the technologies, you want to regulate what are we doing with the technologies in space. How are we going to apply them to build new capabilities? So that might be combining technologies, it might be using different things in different ways, but fundamentally what do we want to do with space are these sorts of capabilities in the future that we need to develop, and some of these don't exist at all yet, and some of them do, but will evolve. So we want to use space for all kinds of things. This is the Futures Workshop, don't worry about the detail, again it's all in the report. But broadly speaking, we sort of took how much conflict is there going to be in space as one of the axes, and how much are we going to exploit space as the other. So are we going to be very dependent on space? And if so, how much conflict are we going to end up with? So we identified 4 future worlds. So we've got resilient world over here, where we might have quite a lot of exploitation of space, so this is a very positive sort of future. Very low conflict environment in which we've got a lot of collaboration, a lot of agreements, a lot of ethics going on in space, a lot of responsible behaviours. That would all be lovely. I can tell you that nearly everyone at our Space Futures Workshop thought we'd end up over here. And they weren't all military people or anything, we had quite a mix of different people. This seems like a more likely thing, where we're wanting to exploit space a lot, but we're going to end up in quite a high conflict situation, both competition commercially and competition from a defence perspective. And in this case, you've got a much more difficult situation to manage that we need to be thinking about now. Then we sort of thought about some other, what if we're less reliant on space, or for whatever reason we can't really use space as much as we would like to, let's say the debris gets too bad. We might just, this says failing to benefit from space. We might just fail to use space and get all these benefits that we've been talking about, and that would be a shame, that would be a missed opportunity for humanity. Or we might end up in a sort of, I guess, sort of quite resilient and adaptable kind of world, where we're sort of doing some things in space, not everything, but sort of, you know, a much more mixed economy, I guess, is sort of that world. So, as I've only got 3 minutes, this is absolutely rushing through a 100-page report. Our high-level recommendations to government, which we are now waiting for the new government to respond to, and which they are legally obliged to, so I look forward to seeing their response, are that we should really focus on space sustainability. This feels like a no-brainer, everyone says it, we said it too. So not only developing the technology that's going to be needed for sustainability in space, so debris removal and so on, but crucially, creating the regulatory environment that's actually going to allow us to deploy that technology, which at the moment, as I said, is absent. So if you developed right now the best debris removal system in the world and stuck it up in space, you don't have any international agreement that you're allowed to deploy that or operate it. What if you picked up a bit of Chinese space junk? You could be starting the next World War. We simply haven't got any agreements about it, so we need to develop that. What could the UK do? We can't do everything. I think we should be thinking about ourselves as the Global Centre for Space Law. What we're really good at in the city where we are things like arbitration, insurance, financial services and products. This is where we could play a brilliant role in the space supply chain and develop a lot of soft power, and we could do that relatively quickly and for relatively small investment. This is what I've suggested to government we should really focus on. And I was also really interested, and the report goes more into this, about how we get better public engagement and collective investment in space. At the moment, if you're a space startup, you probably are trying to get VC investment. Well, that's going to drive you down a certain profit-driven route where you want to get up in space quickly, start making loads of money. That's not necessarily going to be sensible from an overall collective responsible use of space perspective. So how can we get collective investment in ethical space technologies and different models of ownership which are not about profit making but about benefiting humanity as a whole? Thank you very much.
very much, Lucy. So we explored the technologies, the regulations, the research and development in space. Now we're moving into a territory where we'll explore the symbiosis of art, of science, and also the possible of human capabilities to leverage technologies and inventiveness for the next 500 years. Dramatic effect. So on that note, I'm inviting architect Anna Stan.
Thank you. Hello everyone. I'm going to present to you my science fiction project, which is called Consciousness versus Objects Phenomena, a Celestial Exploration. It is my master project, my master thesis. And when I made this project, I had 3 aims in mind. Oops. I pressed on something. I'll leave this. So my 3 aims were: how can we protect the planet, but also how can we inspire and how can we heal through our arts projects. My project is, as you can see in this image, it's a flexible satellite-controlled hive that is meant to protect the planet from solar radiation and space debris. And I believe that as designers, we can dream and we can create what we want, but I think the most important thing is to inspire everyone else to include art in their practice, even if that is science or space exploration. So that's what I'm trying to do with the project. So imagine that you see that swarm, the hive, the protective sphere around the Earth. Imagine that each and every one of us is responsible for one of those golden particles that protect the Earth. So what if, in let's say 100 years time or 200 years time, you can create a duplication, digital duplication of your consciousness, of your mind, a part of your mind, put it onto a microchip. It's almost possible. And then place it in one of those pyramid-shaped structures, metallic structures, and send it into outer space. Not only would you contribute to protecting the Earth with this swarm, but your microchip could connect to the space debris. For example, what if you could connect to the glove lost by Ed White in space? And you could find out what its life is about. So we're going into object-oriented ontology, so a bit of philosophy here. But this is not about the intellectual inquiry about the life of objects, really. It's more about questioning human-centeredness, questioning the relationship between humans, nature, and objects, so that we can see our impact and our contribution on our planet and on the objects around us. I'm going to show you a video that hopefully explains the project more.
Golden pyramid particles embedded with our consciousness are loaded onto spacecrafts and propelled to geosynchronous orbit to experience the life of objects and space debris. Imagine sending your mind to space to transcend your knowledge and protect the planet. Could this experience help us understand a critically alternative point of view in the way in which we look at ourselves and the objects around us? Our particles swarm to assemble a flexible sphere around the Earth with the purpose of protecting it. The shield represents all the inhabitants of the Earth as we act collectively at a global level against the injustices of the world and take care of our home. Celestial architectures are taking shape, embellishing our skies, designed to recycle space debris and produce valuable resources. The particles reflect sunlight, harvest solar power, and help our consciousness connect to the objects in orbit to experience their lives. Looking back at the planet from the sky as celestial conscious bodies, we have the chance to experience life from a different perspective. We must bridge between this world and all its species, objects, and realms, even the cosmic ones. Could this answer some of our existential questions about the life of the living and non-living and bring our consciousness back to Earth free of uncertainty? The journey of experiencing the life of objects is almost tangible. The swarm of particles is the organizational structure of the future where the living and non-living stand even-handed, as if we can only address climate catastrophes if we all work in unity.
And now, to conclude, I just want to leave you with some open questions in mind. Because even though this project is meant to be a work of utopian ambition, so the best scenario, it is actually meant to question the relationship that we have between humans, nature, and objects, so that we learn to treat everything around us in a better way, learn to treat our planet in a better way, and the planets we're trying to maybe inhabit or study in the space exploration, on the space exploration journey. We have to treat them with more consideration, and I hope that we can inspire people to do that, to think about it. So, do you think that if we all come together as a collective agency, we can protect the planet, we can change something in the course, or and if so, how would that look like? What would it look like? What would the space architecture look like? And also, how would you feel if you would look up at the sky now and you would see that swarm of small star-like particles, and you would know that one of those is representing you, and you know that you have an impact on the protection of the planet? I hope I inspired you and made you dream a bit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. This reminds me of something that happened 19 years ago. So I was 5 years old, and I had a dream, a literal dream, and I was traveling towards moon in that dream. And the plan was to build a city there. Now, for a good reason, I was playing with a lot of Legos when I was a kid. But I woke up with a combination of anxiety and excitement, because it was the most meaningful thing I can think about. So I asked my parents, what should I do to build cities on the moon? And they laughed initially, and they said, well, actually, if you're really serious about it, you should become an architect. Okay. That was my first realization. The second realization was that in order to build cities on the moon, you need more than being a good architect. You need technologies. So when I was 11, I started programming to create technologies that can augment the human capabilities to do very complicated things, especially such as building cities in space. And I became an architect, an urban planner. And in parallel, I was developing technologies that were leveraging satellites, AI, and also human expertise, with this vision of creating what I was calling symbiotic wisdom. So using the technology, using the human expertise and AI to see where and how we can improve cities. And hoping that one day we can use that technology on the moon for things such as identifying lava tubes, identifying suitable locations to develop those cities. That was my second realization, that technology is important. My third one, however, is that technology alone is not enough. Funding alone is not enough. We need people. People like you that are here today, that are enthusiastic about this. People such as Lucy or Vanya, which are bringing their deep expertise in space. People such as Anna, which has great ideas about the future. or people like Paul Collingwood and his great team at Pan Galactic, which is coming with ideas about how to commercialize space, how to create innovation and make space a safer place in the universe. And we need more people. We need more people because space is one of those few things that are unifying. And if you want to have a better future on Earth and in space, we need to expand the capabilities to improve our Earth, to leverage the resources in space, and also to expand our understanding of the universe. And again, we need more than technologies, we need more than funding, we need exciting stories about the future. And on that note, I'm happy to invite Daniel Rosaki, co-founder of Symbiotic 8 and author and co-author of stories that reach millions of people, and also created stories about Mars, about Moon, and about an AI and satellite powered future. Daniel, the floor is yours.
So, hello, I am Daniel. We're going to talk about stories for a bit. So, since the moment we're born, we are both living through and creating our own stories. And as we go, the creation of self, the story of us, takes form. Stories are important. They are a very big part of humanity. They are us. And they're important because they bring wisdom, they bring an element of stability, but more so, they remind us we're not alone. So, I believe you all like stories. Probably you've all heard stories. Your parents told you stories. Why do we like stories? Stories connect us. And stories connect us because they put us together. They create a sense of belonging. Since the dawn of man, we have looked to the stars and we have created stories about God and heroes and glory. Some of us have watched the stars and created stories about patterns, numbers, equations. Others thought of sadness, of struggle, turmoil. But each of them inspired people to dream, to create, to feel seen, to belong. And although humanity has been pretty much struggling throughout its history and stumbled along the way, we have done so beautifully and we have achieved greater purpose together. As a species, I believe we are meant to work together to create such great purposes. One of these purposes is making space our home and using it to create a better world for everyone. The story of Neil Armstrong putting his first step on the moon is not his. Neither is Cassini, neither is Opportunity. All these are the stories of many working together, creating something new, daring to dream together. This, today, is the first page of our story. So let's make it a great one.
So today we explored many aspects of space, from technology to research to regulations to inventiveness and how it can be used as a power, as a superpower to expand beyond Earth. And the power of unified minds acting together for a greater purpose is what makes humanity great. And I hope today it's a new page, a new chapter in space expansion, as well as a new chapter for the RSA towards the stars.